The sound of tearing paper cut through AP history class like a blade. 28 students froze mid-breath as Garrett Walsh stood before the teacher's desk, methodically ripping an essay into strips. Each piece floated down to scatter across the polished floor, white fragments settling like accusatory snow. 6'2" of athletic arrogance wrapped in a lacrosse jacket, shoulders squared in a posture that screamed untouchable. His blue eyes locked onto the woman behind the desk, with the kind of contempt reserved for those he considered beneath him. Sarah Bennett sat perfectly still in her chair. 5'3" in a plain brown cardigan and modest skirt, wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose, looking every bit the vulnerable new teacher everyone assumed she was. But something about her stillness was wrong. Not the frozen panic of someone terrified, but the controlled calm of someone waiting. Her hands rested flat on the desk surface, fingers splayed in a position that seemed almost deliberate. "You think you're qualified to give the son of Colonel Walsh a D?" Garrett's voice carried to every corner of the silent classroom. "My father commands Fort Clayton. One phone call and you'll be gone from this town before you can pack your civilian bags." The threat hung heavy in the air. Students shifted in their seats, some filming on phones held low beneath desks, others staring with the morbid fascination of witnesses to an inevitable disaster. This was how it always went at Ridgemont High. Garrett pushed. Teachers broke. The pattern had held for 3 educators before Sarah Bennett arrived 7 weeks ago. But Sarah didn't flinch. Instead, she did something that made the air in the room shift. She smiled. Not a nervous smile or a placating one, but something small and knowing, like she'd just been handed exactly what she needed. Her right hand moved to her cardigan pocket, withdrawing a black pen. Except the way she held it. Thumb positioned just so along the barrel, grip firm and practiced, made it look less like a writing instrument and more like precision equipment. "Thank you, Garrett." Her voice carried none of the fear he'd been hunting for. "Evidence logged. Timestamp recorded. Witnesses confirmed." She glanced at her wrist, at a watch that definitely wasn't the Apple Watch most teachers wore. This was something else entirely, black and tactical with too many buttons, the kind that looked built for environments far harsher than suburban classrooms. "In 18 minutes, everything changes." Garrett's smirk faltered, confusion flickered across his face before arrogance slammed back into place. Behind him, his girlfriend Tiffany leaned forward, whispering something to Josh. The 3 of them, children of Fort Clayton's officer elite, had perfected the art of intimidation through 2 years of high school dominance. But Sarah Bennett's calm was throwing off their calculations. The bell rang. Students gathered belongings in hurried silence, rushing to escape the tension. Garrett kicked the torn essay pieces as he walked out, making sure his designer sneakers scattered them further. Sarah waited until the room emptied before moving. Then she bent down with fluid economy of motion, collecting each fragment. Placing them in a clear plastic bag she pulled from her desk. The bag already contained a label with printed text, Exhibit 14, Walsh, G., Destruction of Property. If you've ever felt powerless watching someone abuse authority, you're not alone. This story is for everyone who stayed silent when they wanted to scream. If this resonates with you, hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us share more stories about courage, justice, and the moment underdogs refuse to stay down. And drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Building this community means everything. Now, let's see what happens when someone finally fights back the right way. 3 weeks earlier, Sarah had walked into Ridgemont High carrying a single leather briefcase and a resume so unremarkable it practically vanished into the background. Bachelor's degree from University of Virginia, master's in education, 2 years teaching experience at schools no one bothered to verify, because her references checked out perfectly. Principal Mitchell had hired her without hesitation, desperate to fill the position left vacant when Mrs. Henderson took sudden early retirement after what the official record called personal health issues. The unofficial truth, whispered in teachers' lounges and student bathrooms, was that Garrett Walsh had systematically destroyed her will to teach. Sarah's first week passed in careful observation. She noted how Garrett held court at the center lunch table, the one closest to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the football field. How other officer kids gravitated to him while enlisted soldiers' children ate at tables near the back. How Coach Brandon, himself a veteran, averted his eyes when Garrett shoved a smaller student in the hallway. How Principal Mitchell's office door bore a framed photograph of himself shaking hands with Colonel James Walsh at some ribbon-cutting ceremony, the image positioned where every visitor would see it. But Sarah's attention caught on details others might dismiss. The way Riley Martinez, a quiet junior with tired eyes, flinched whenever Garrett passed. The nervous glance Mrs. Park, the veteran math teacher, gave Sarah during their one faculty meeting. A look that said, "Leave while you still can." The maintenance worker who avoided the hallway near Garrett's locker during passing period. Patterns emerged for those trained to see them. Sarah's classroom became her observation post. She positioned her desk at an angle that gave her clear sight lines to the door and windows, back never fully turned to the entrance. Students who paid attention noticed she always arrived 20 minutes early and left 30 minutes late. Always alone. Always moving with a purposeful efficiency that seemed at odds with her mild-mannered appearance. Her lesson plans were thorough, her teaching style engaging enough to hold attention, but not so dynamic as to draw unwanted scrutiny. The first breadcrumb dropped during week 2. Sarah had been explaining the Marshall Plan's economic impact when Garrett interrupted to challenge a date she'd mentioned. Instead of getting flustered, she'd walked to her desk and retrieved a small notebook, flipping to a page with practiced speed that suggested muscle memory rather than luck. The page bore notations in a format that made Mrs. Park's eyes narrow. Military-style abbreviation codes, timestamps written in 24-hour format, references marked with alphanumeric designations. September 4th, 1947, Sarah read without hesitation. The program officially began after Secretary Marshall's speech at Harvard that June. I believe you're confusing it with the Truman Doctrine announcement in March. She closed the notebook, but not before Garrett glimpsed pages filled with dense, methodical documentation that looked nothing like a history teacher's lesson notes. During week 3, the physical tells became harder to ignore. Sarah moved through crowded hallways with unusual spatial awareness, her body angling sideways through groups of students in a way that kept her peripheral vision clear. When the fire alarm shrieked during 4th period, a drill no one had been warned about, every teacher jumped. Except Sarah. She simply stood, counted silently to 3 while scanning the room, then directed students to the exit with the calm of someone who'd evacuated buildings under actual threat. Riley Martinez had been watching. After class, she approached Sarah's desk where other students wouldn't hear. "Ms. Bennett, can I ask you something?" The girl's fingers twisted her backpack straps. "My dad's a Marine. He moves like you do. That thing you did during the fire drill, counting before reacting, he taught me that. Said it's training." Sarah's expression remained neutral, but her eyes held Riley's for 3 seconds too long. "Your father sounds like a smart man. Panic helps no one." She turned back to her papers, conversation clearly over. But Riley left the room with something that looked like hope. The cafeteria incident the following Monday crystallized everything. Sarah had been standing in the lunch line, tray in hand, when Garrett's voice carried from the officer kids' table. Heard Ms. Bennett applied to join the Army once but couldn't pass the physical. Weak civilian playing dress-up. Tiffany's laugh rang out, sharp and performative. Sarah collected her sandwich and apple without changing expression. She didn't turn toward Garrett's table, but as she walked past, her voice carried with perfect clarity, pitched not loud, but precisely calibrated to reach every nearby ear. Misinformation campaign. Classic tactic. Under military law, false official statements fall under Article 107. Particularly problematic when documented with witnesses and timestamps. She kept walking, never breaking stride. The words landed like grenades in still water. Students at 3 surrounding tables froze with forks halfway to mouths. Article 107 wasn't common knowledge. Neither was the casual reference to military law, as if it were as familiar as traffic regulations. Riley's eyes went wide. She'd heard her father cite UCMJ articles enough times to recognize the cadence. Josh leaned over to Garrett, whispering urgently. Garrett's face darkened, the flush of someone whose instincts were screaming that something was wrong but whose arrogance refused to acknowledge it. That evening, a fake Instagram account appeared. Ridgemont teacher fails. The bio read, "Exposing incompetent educators." The first post was a compilation video, 15 seconds of Sarah supposedly sleeping during a faculty meeting, edited to look damning. Except anyone who looked closely could see the timestamp had been manipulated. The video's metadata, visible to anyone who knew where to look, showed creation time, device ID, and location coordinates that traced directly to Josh's iPhone at the Walsh family residence on base. Sarah discovered the account at 8:30 p.m. sitting in her small apartment on Elm Street. Her laptop sat open on the kitchen table, but the screen didn't show Instagram. Instead, a command line interface filled the display. White text on black background. The kind of software civilians didn't typically access. She typed commands with the unconscious speed of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. Within 7 minutes, she'd traced the IP address, pulled registration data, and screenshot the geolocation metadata showing every post's origin point. She opened a separate window, this one displaying a document template with official formatting. Header: Incident Report 28. Subheading: Subject: Walsh, Garrett. Accomplice: Chen, Josh. Nature: Cyber harassment. Evidence: Digital forensics complete. She attached the screenshots, saved the file to a folder labeled Operation Cleanup, Confidential, and backed everything up to an encrypted cloud server with a government domain extension. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unlisted number. Package 28 received. Chain of custody confirmed. Continue observation. Sarah's response was 3 words. Escalation expected. Ready. The next morning brought the vandalism. Sarah walked to the faculty parking lot at 7:15 a.m. to find her Toyota Camry transformed into evidence. All 4 tires slashed, not randomly, but with precision cuts that suggested someone who knew how to disable a vehicle. The word civilian keyed deep into the driver's side door panel. A spiderweb crack in the windshield, radiating from impact point center mass, the kind made by a thrown object with force behind it. Security guard James stood 30 feet away, conspicuously focused on his phone. Sarah approached him first, her voice pleasant. "I'll need the security footage. 7 a.m. to 7:15 a.m., this camera angle." She pointed to the mounted unit overlooking the parking section. James didn't look up. "System was down for maintenance." "No, it wasn't." Sarah pulled out her phone, showing him a screenshot. "I verified system status at 6:45 a.m. when I arrived. All cameras operational. Green status indicators across the board." She waited. Lying to a federal agent during an active investigation carries specific penalties under 18 U.S.C. 1001. You might want to reconsider. James's head snapped up, face draining of color. What? But Sarah had already moved past him, circling her vehicle with phone raised. She wasn't taking random photos. Each shot was deliberate, methodical. Tire damage from multiple angles with a pocket ruler placed for scale reference. Paint depth measurements. Glass fracture pattern with emphasis on impact point characteristics. Tool mark impressions in rubber that would allow identification of the specific blade used. She narrated quietly as she worked, her voice picked up by the phone's recorder. 7:17 a.m. Vehicle Papa Tango, 779, documenting evidence of felony destruction valued over $1,000. 4 tires, Michelin X Ice, retail $896. Paint repair, estimated $1,200. Windshield replacement, $600. North Carolina General Statute 14-160 applies. Additional federal jurisdiction applicable given victim status. She pulled from her bag a small device that looked like an ordinary USB drive but was marked with official government inventory tags. This wasn't consumer electronics. The forensic recording device she'd been carrying for 3 months was military-grade, capable of capturing audio within a 30-foot radius with courtroom-acceptable clarity. Every file it generated came pre-encrypted with AES 256 security and timestamp authentication that couldn't be altered or forged. The kind of equipment that cost taxpayers $3,000 per unit and was issued exclusively to federal investigators. Sarah had hidden one in her classroom, one in her car, and carried one on her person. The device in her vehicle had been running since she arrived, which meant it had captured every word spoken in the parking lot for the previous 45 minutes, including Garrett's voice, recorded at 6:47 a.m., saying to Josh, "Make sure she knows this is just the start." The device wasn't just any recording equipment. It was specialized gear used by law enforcement and military intelligence designed to maintain legal chain of custody from the moment of recording through courtroom presentation. Each file was automatically backed up to secure servers, tagged with GPS coordinates, and encoded with verification data that would prove it hadn't been tampered with. Every threat, every whispered conspiracy, every casual admission of guilt was now locked in a format that defense attorneys couldn't successfully challenge. Sarah uploaded the morning's recordings to her secure server, adding them to the 27 previous incident files. Then she made a phone call. Not to local police, not to school administration. The number she dialed had a government prefix. Need vehicle recovery for evidence preservation. Sending coordinates now. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional. Confirmed, ma'am. Team dispatching. ETA 22 minutes. 22 minutes later, a tow truck arrived. Not a civilian contractor, but a military vehicle with Fort Clayton markings. The driver saluted Sarah before loading her Camry. Students walking past stared. Garrett, arriving for first period, stopped dead. His face went through a rapid calculation, confusion, concern, and the first real flash of fear. Because normal teachers called AAA. They didn't dispatch military recovery teams with a phone call. By Thursday afternoon, Garrett's confidence had curdled into desperation. He cornered Sarah in the empty hallway near the science wing, Tiffany and Josh flanking like trained enforcers. The corridor stretched silent around them, afternoon sun slicing through windows to paint harsh shadows across linoleum. "You're going to change my grade to a B," Garrett said, stepping close enough that Sarah had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "And you're going to tell Principal Mitchell this was all a misunderstanding." Sarah didn't retreat. Or things get worse. Josh moved to block the exit behind her. "We know where you live. Small apartment on Elm Street. Ground floor. Those windows don't look very secure." The threat hung between them like smoke. Sarah's expression didn't change. Are you threatening me with home invasion, Garrett? Tiffany laughed, the sound brittle. We're just stating facts, Ms. Bennett. Facts? Sarah's voice dropped to conversational softness. Let me state some. Under UCMJ Article 134, threatening a service member is punishable under military law. Under 18 U.S.C. 876, threatening communications constitute federal crime. And under North Carolina statute, conspiracy to commit breaking and entering qualifies as felony offense. She paused. Do you understand the legal weight of what you just said? You're not military, Garrett shot back, but uncertainty crept into his voice. You're just a teacher playing tough. Sarah's hand moved to her collar. For half a second, a chain glinted there, metal catching light. Not jewelry. The distinctive ball chain of military identification tags. Garrett's eyes locked onto it before Sarah's fingers covered the reveal. Family heirloom, she said, too casually. But dog tags weren't heirlooms. They were active duty identification. Friday's assembly was supposed to be Garrett's coronation. 800 students packed the auditorium as he took the stage, laptop connected to the projection system. Principal Mitchell introduced him with nervous enthusiasm. Garrett Walsh, Student Council Vice President, presenting concerns about educational standards. The title slide appeared, When Teachers Fail, a Case Study. For 12 minutes, Garrett performed. Fabricated statistics about Sarah's failure rate. Anonymous student complaints that couldn't be verified. Videos edited to make her look incompetent. A petition with 300 signatures demanding her removal. His voice carried righteous conviction. This teacher targets military families. She's hostile to students whose parents serve our country. Ridgemont deserves better. Applause rippled through sections of the audience. Garrett's smile was triumphant. Ms. Bennett is here. Maybe she'd like to respond? The spotlight swung to Sarah in the back row. She stood, walked to the stage with measured steps, took the microphone Garrett offered with false courtesy. Thank you, Garrett. Impressive presentation. She produced a USB drive from her pocket. May I share one of my own? Garrett's confidence held. Sure. Sarah plugged the drive into his laptop. A new presentation loaded. The title slide made the auditorium inhale as one. Operation Cleanup. Evidence Report. The next slide showed credentials that rewrote reality. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Bennett, JAGC USN Service. Active Duty. Naval Intelligence Clearance. Top Secret. SCI Current Assignment. Undercover Investigation. Fort Clayton Corruption. Chaos erupted. Phones raised. Voices overlapped. Garrett's face drained to chalk white. I've been embedded at Ridgemont High for 3 months, Sarah continued, voice cutting through noise with military precision. Conducting an Inspector General investigation into nepotism, abuse of authority, and dependent misconduct connected to Fort Clayton Base. She advanced slides, each one a hammer blow, her military ID photo, dress uniform, rank insignia, unmistakable. Audio recordings of Garrett's threats, timestamps verified. Video footage of Josh vandalizing her vehicle while Garrett watched. Text messages between Colonel Walsh and Principal Mitchell. Handle the Bennett problem. Our arrangement depends on it. Financial records showing the colonel accepting contractor kickbacks. Documentation of 17 prior complaints about Garrett, all buried. Under UCMJ Article 134, conduct unbecoming an officer. Article 92, failure to obey regulations. Article 107, false official statements. Sarah's delivery was clinical. Under federal law 18 U.S.C. 201, bribery of public officials. The auditorium doors opened. 4 figures in suits entered, NCIS badges catching stage light. The lead agent's voice carried, "Colonel James Walsh, you're under investigation. Garrett Walsh, you're being charged under military dependent conduct regulations." Military police escorted Colonel Walsh from his seat in the front row, his face rigid with shock. Garrett stood frozen on stage as agents approached. Josh and Tiffany were removed from the audience. Principal Mitchell's office was being sealed by federal marshals even as students watched. Riley Martinez stood in the crowd, tears streaming. "Ma'am, can I say something?" Sarah nodded. Riley's voice shook but held firm. "Garrett posted private photos of me online last year. When I reported it, nothing happened. My dad's enlisted, not high rank enough to matter." She looked at Sarah. "Thank you for listening when no one else would." 3 more students rose. Same stories. The pattern confirmed publicly. Video of the assembly was already streaming, #military accountability climbing trending lists. Sarah's final words to Garrett before agents led him away. "You thought civilian meant powerless. You thought teacher meant weak. Federal law doesn't care about your last name. Military justice doesn't care how much your father donated. Honor isn't inherited. It's earned." 2 weeks later, Sarah packed her classroom for the last time. Consequences had cascaded. Colonel Walsh suspended pending court-martial. Garrett removed to juvenile facility. Principal Mitchell resigned under pressure. 3 previous teachers invited back with settlements. Riley stopped by as Sarah sealed the last box. "Will you stay, ma'am? Teach here?" "My assignment is complete." Sarah managed a small smile. "But the new principal is solid. You'll be safe now." Mrs. Park appeared in the doorway. "I knew something was different about you from day one. The way you moved. How you observed. Military bearing. You could have exposed me. I trusted my instincts." Mrs. Park's expression softened. "Where will you go?" "Where I'm needed next." Sarah's car headed west on Interstate 40, GPS showing 1,240 miles to Fort Harrison, South Dakota. Her phone rang. The Inspector General contact. "Commander Bennett, new assignment." Details? Similar pattern. Military academy this time. Commandant's daughter. 5 cadets dropped out in 6 months. No official complaints filed. Sarah pulled up files on her tablet. Cover page, Operation Honor Code, classified. Photos of cadets. 1 circled. A young woman with a colonel's last name. An email notification appeared. Sender: Walsh, Garrett, juvenile detention. Subject: "I'm sorry." Sarah opened it. The message was short. "You were right. I was entitled. I hurt people. Dad's career is over because of me. Mom filed for divorce. I deserve this. But thank you for stopping me before I destroyed someone else's life completely. I want to be better. Can people like me change?" Sarah stared at the screen for 30 seconds, then typed her response. "Sorry is a start. Change is a lifetime commitment. The choice is yours every day." She hit send, closed the laptop, focused on the highway stretching into sunset. Her voice, quiet, in the empty car. Every town has a Garrett Walsh. Every base has someone who thinks rank means immunity. And somewhere, there's always a teacher getting silenced. The rear-view mirror reflected the sign disappearing behind her. "Thank you for visiting Fort Clayton, America's finest." Sarah's eyes shifted forward to the road ahead. The hunt continues.